Welcome to another edition of Notes from Erin. This week, I'm very, very excited to talk to two people, Ryan, Ryan Stopera, and then also Diana Albrecht. We're going to be talking about their new book, which I'm so excited to talk about, which is Back of House. So if you guys could you guys give my readers a background about yourself, some of your background, and then also what you both do as well?
Amazing. I'm Diana Albrecht. So my artist bio is I'm a queer Korean adoptee, like creative person. I got my start in photography like when I was a teenager, but I currently work as an art director in the advertising space. So that's what I do full time. And then in relation to Back of House, I am one of the authors and creators, and I did all the design work for the book as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I'm Ryan Stopera. I am a social worker and a community organizer turned artist. Um, so I actually started documenting protests around like 2009, like after the big Wall Street crash, and started learning how to tell stories through photo and film. So now I'm a photographer and a filmmaker, and I like to organize spaces around the arts and was lucky enough to have Diana slide in my DMs and ask if I want to make a photo book cookbook.
Perfect. Well, I was gonna ask, how did the cookbook come together? Like, I feel like I've read a few interviews, but I just so everyone else will know too.
I mean, it was what Ryan said. I slid into his DMs in a totally platonic and professional way. I think I've just admired Ryan's ability to engage with community, and I think he does it in a really authentic and um, just real way. That's something I strive to do in my work as well. But Ryan's just like so well connected, in addition to being, talented, of course. Um, but at the time, he was running a cafe at Public Functionary, and so I was really inspired by the work that he was doing there. And it was just an idea that I had. I've always been, obsessed with food and culture, and I really love layout and book design, and I was itching to make another book.
No, I think that comes across. I think reading, because I did actually like read the stories within the cookbook. Like, I think one thing that I really enjoy is I like a cookbook, even though I'm dibbling and dabbling in my cooking. Like, I kind of have my little things I know how to make, and then I'm trying to like grow and develop more. I think what I really liked about the cookbook is that while it is a cookbook, you learn recipes. I feel like you learn so much about people and their cultures. So I think just even like Ryan, maybe like your background with social work too, I think, and also like with community organizing, I think when you read the book, that comes across well. Like, I think the stories are so good. And I think also, I really like how you guys weave in your own stories within people's stories, which I really enjoyed reading.
Yeah, I feel like we're lucky. Like Diana and I have a lot of relationships with the folks in the book, but about half were like folks that we met through the process. And it was really interesting to see how much our stories, both of ours, intersected with others, and there's a lot of connection points and even like insight and like revelations in some senses. And I think that's maybe a testament to like when you sit down and have intentional conversations, like slow down and make and eat food together. That's what can come of that. Because yeah, some of the stories are just like really beautiful synergy there.
Mhm. No, I think that comes across. And I would say also, like, food is, in a way, it's like a universal language because it's something that we all have. Like, you need food to survive. And I think reading so many of the stories, like, I know there was MK's story about like intergenerational eating. I feel like there's so much of like my family culture and like things that I'm used to weaved into that. So I think just how universal all the stories were, I thought it was really beautiful to read.
Thank you.
Not cough. Okay, and so there was 12 different people featured. So I guess for you both, like for one, how did you figure out the people who you were going to feature? Like I know you just mentioned some people you knew, but then also I do enjoy it's people from so many different backgrounds too. So how did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, part of my work as being an art director is being able to look at things from like a really holistic but bird's eye view. Um, you know, I think Ryan and I took the time to really be intentional about I don't know if curating is the right word, but really gathering a group of people whose stories felt diverse enough to like the immigrant component, right? Everyone has a very different immigration story. You know, everyone is, for the most part, everyone is from a different country of origin, but also like considering family dynamics, right? We have a lot of families featured in the books, but I'm an adoptee, and so like my relationship with family and culture is like very different from people who are um, connected to their nuclear family and their culture. So there's a lot of considerations that Ryan and I thought of beyond just like race or country of origin, that I really think help paint a really colorful picture of the immigrant experience, of like how people and families and individuals relate to food and how food can be kind of, a vessel to a lot of different types of storytelling.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, really none of the chefs in the book are like celebrity chefs. I think one only has like a brick and mortar space, and that one was really special. But they're all like are almost they do so much with their community, but they don't get a lot of shine or flowers or press. So it felt like celebrating like the invisible caretakers. Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think also the forward that Ali did, I think that really like set the tone for what to expect from the book because I know like how you mentioned he said like how these are people who are not necessarily like the celebrated people in restaurants and like also they're like the grandmothers who like pass down their recipes to different generations. And I think one thing that he said, and I guess I'll ask you guys this too, and I think when I read it I kept thinking about it, was when you think of, I believe it's like when you think of home, what is a food that comes to mind or like something that you think of. And when I read that, when I first got the cookbook, I feel like I asked this question to like I think I asked it like to four or five people because I was kind of struggling with that because while I am like I'm black obviously, but I also like my mother's family, they are Ethiopian, but we don't really know much of our Ethiopian culture at all. So like I don't really eat Ethiopian food, I don't know language, but I think sometimes like I feel like if I were to eat more of the food or like engross myself in my community that way, I probably would learn a little bit more. But then I also look at like my grandmother who is from New Orleans on the other side. And so much of what I think of like home is what I think of what she cooks. So I was asking people like what they thought of that. So I guess for both of you, like, what do you think of when you think of home?
I mean, I feel like Diana wrote an essay that was just so powerful that spoke to that. I don't, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to like share that because it was deep in what you were reflecting as an adoptee too.
Yeah, I mean, similar to you, Aaron, like that's hard for me, right? Because like I'm adopted, and so like growing up in the Midwest with a white mother, a well-intending white mother from Iowa, it's like a lot of like casserole, or sometimes she would try to make japchae, and she put in her best effort, and I respect her for that. Um, But there's another adoptee in the book named Jackie who she grew up in New Zealand, but her birth father is Vietnamese and her birth mother is Chinese Polynesian. And so you have like a triad of different cultures here, and she's like, trying to think of food from New Zealand that like reminded her of her childhood and her culture, but she's like, all of that is like a result of colonization, right? And so it's a lot of like British food, and she like her foster mother growing up is British. Um, so it was interesting engaging in conversation with her because I could resonate with being like very lost and confused and not having a super great answer for this. And ultimately, what she came up with is a ceviche, right? So she's taking like the fresh fish that she might find in New Zealand, but implementing ingredients like coconut milk and like Vietnamese fish sauce that like played homage to her Asian culture in a very like nuanced and indirect way. So like you, I don't really have a great answer. And I think that's kind of like the beauty in this book is that there are people that have a very concrete answer to that question, and then there's also a lot of room for ambiguity and nuance and exploration and like being okay with not having that answer.
Mhm. No,
Yeah, I
definitely.
mean, I think food, I think a lot about like homemaking, because like home and community and like family and chosen family like can be created and it is also what you're like born into, and like food can be a vessel to make home or like make
Yeah.
community that you want. And so I'm mixed, I'm Chinese and Polish, so like home was a lot of dumplings, whether it was like Chinese dumplings or pierogi. And then in the cafe, I chose to like make home there and like share that with community through like sharing my mother's Chinese dumpling recipe, and that was really cool, to extend that to the community and feed them and like give that feeling and make everyone use chopsticks even if they couldn't. It was fun.
No, I love that. And I think too, like reading, I feel like the community aspect does come across because so much of the stories, it's um, like I can't remember her name, but she's from Western Africa, from her name, and she had the peanut soup.
Oh,
Yes.
Awa and Rose.
Yeah. And I think like reading her story, how, like, for one, I think I I haven't really met many people because she's from Togo, right? Togo. So I feel like I haven't really met many people from there, but even like seeing how she said like she lived in the apartment complex and there was other families that lived near her, and then just seeing like Natalia's story, with um, like how her grandfather was a community organizer and he made the chicken and the bud with the beer to feed so much of the community and the migrants. And I just thought it was really beautiful how everything was captured. So I think even like hearing Ryan how you bring the community, like how you brought that into the cafe, I think that is cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I think one thing too, Diana, going a little bit into your story, I feel like when I was reading MJ's story, I believe, I think I learned so much from that story. Because I feel like for one, like there was some stats around like Korean adoptees and how much your stories were similar, like how you guys were both adopted in the same year. Um, I feel like I'm not going to say Minneapolis, correct? That is right or wrong?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Uh, so I didn't really know about that much. And I think from that story, I did think of like, I guess like documenting that story. Like, how much did you, or if at all, did you learn about yourself or like think about yourself in that story, I guess?
I mean, I think to your earlier point, Ryan and I did have a conversation with our editor, Scott, about how much we want to infuse like our own um personal kind of anecdotal thoughts, POVs, opinions, whatever in there. And I think, we had decided like, you know, this this is important to kind of share our perspective and what we're learning and feeling in the moment because I think it helps bring that authenticity and almost provides the context because not everyone reading these stories are gonna have already have that like understanding or even like truly empathetic context to really understand these stories. And so in relation to MJ's story, I mean, MJ is one of my closest friends. She is someone that I knew and I knew before this and wanted to include her story in this. Um, and I've learned about myself with every project I do. In terms of MJ's story specifically, we're best friends. Like I think she's such a funny and hilarious person. And so I wrote about like our time and kind of like the jokes that we were making and just kind of like, our best friend banter. And then in the editing phase, she was just kind of like, I don't know if this is the tone that I want my story portrayed in. And I'm like, I was going through a lot of the moments. I'm like, hold up, well, like, what are you saying? Like, I thought I did you justice. And she's like, yes, but like, developing a kimchi recipe is so personal and emotional for me because, or for her, because she is an adoptee. She grew up estranged from her Korean culture, and she also does work in a professional kitchen at a nicer restaurant in Northeast Minneapolis. So like she is by trade a very technical and a very precise person. And so developing this kimchi recipe and like the story is about like trial and error, patience, loving yourself, forgiving yourself, all of these things. And she's like, I don't know if having like the jokes that you and I, shared between us is appropriate for this story because it almost like disrespects the process, you know? Because it is so serious for her, because it is so deeply emotional and like truly like a healing process for her to develop, you know, the multitude of like various kimchi recipes that she's developed over the years and to truly make something that she feels proud that she like wants to put in a book. So that's something that like, I for that specific story, I kind of like I took a step back and I was like, this really does mean a lot to these people. And like I obviously have an understanding of her adoptee experience, and I think had I not, my reaction might have been a little bit different, or like the process and collaboration with her might have been a little bit different. So obviously, we wanted to honor our subjects, true story and their intent and how they want their stories to be told. So that was definitely like a learning moment for me.
Yeah, I think reading her story, there were so many things that she said that I wrote down. Like, I thought it was interesting. Like, she said she was trying to find like her cultural identity and her background, and how initially she had learned how to make kimchi was from the YouTube.
The YouTube blogger, yeah.
But then she also said, well, I mean, I that's how I learned how to fry chicken. I still don't know how to do it. But uh, she had said also like with kimchi like life, like, I wrote it down. It's like with kimchi, like with life, there are no shortcuts. And then she said patience and openness to learning are key. And I felt like that really resonated with like her story too, of like finding her identity. And I think another thing that she said that I really liked is that she said like basically like fucking up is how you figure out how to move through. And I think that's like so resonant with like anything, but I think specifically like cooking. Like I've had some really like fucked up meals that I've created that I thought were masterpieces, and I took photos of them, and people were like, "Oh, what is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's chicken," but it could be like something completely. They think it's something else. So like that is how you kind of like learn your groove. But also, I would imagine as you're like starting to find a piece of yourself, you also have to like go through the tough times to figure out, and you have to be open to the experience and the connecting. So I really liked that story.
Yeah, exactly. And each story I think has like a theme or some sort of, overall, like I don't know if lesson is the right word, but there is a point to each story other in addition to learning about everyone's um
Mm-hmm.
background. And I think even to that point you were just making, like some of these recipes are from like aunties and grandmas who have like literally never written down the recipe before. So like take everything with truly a grain of salt because you know how grannies and aunties cook, like it's everything is a made up measurement. Everything is just some like
It's a feeling.
like getting some of these folks to like write it down after being in their, this recipe being in their head for however many years, and probably every time they make it, it's different. Like, be open to experimenting with these recipes because you might have to try some things to get it right.
Yeah,
Yeah, honestly,
definitely.
getting the recipes, getting them to write them down was probably one of the hardest parts of the book because they're like, "What do you mean? It's just here, knuckle and the rice." Like they were not like they're not used to writing that down.
Well, no, I did wonder that. Like, what was the experience of, like, well, I guess twofold. So, like, what was the experience of getting them to write the recipes, but then also, um, what was the process of interviewing them? Because I know, like, Ryan, like, well, both of you, like, some of them you, like, how you bring yourself into the essay. Like, you also talked about, like, when people were coming in, how they were dressed and all that. Like, what was the process of, like, doing both, I guess, together?
I mean, I think I think for both of us, like it was like a kind of a rich process. Like for example, I'm trying to think of one that took like particularly long time. Like, I mean, because it's such a deep conversation. I think like with Celeste, for example, I think we talked about it once in passing because we had knew each other, and then we schedule like a virtual call like to ideate on it, and it's such a again deep question like what is a dish that represents your ancestry, your culture. They might not even discover that in that first session. Then you might have another session to like finally pinpoint that, and then you think about like the plan for how are we going to go about it, and then we recorded our conversations while they're cooking and while we're photographing, and then we might come back after. So it was like honestly for some people it was like 5 6 conversations that we melded into one essay and recipe. So it was lengthy and like introspective and at times existential because you're thinking again of like one recipe that defines it all.
I could see that being hard. I think Celeste's story was interesting too, like the family background, like with her near death incident and then her family's story with like their health issues. Like I thought her story was really interesting. Um and I guess also going into that, like what was the photography? Well, I feel like I haven't actually said this since we talked now, but the book is very, 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 very beautiful. So like, especially with it being Christmas, this is like a perfect Christmas gift, like for anyone in your family, because it's for people who want to learn how to cook or it's for people who know how to cook. Like it's just so beautiful. Like the photos are also beautiful. Like I think seeing the photos in context of also seeing like reading the stories and then also like how some of the pages like there's so much space at the top, but then there's the text there and you go like you flip through to the photos. I just loved it. So also like what was the photo process similar to the interview process? Like were you doing those all at the same time too?
Yeah. I mean, when we did the actual shoot, you know, we I've worked one of my first clients was like a food client in a consumer packaged good brands. And so I've done lots of like food photo shoots in my life as an art director. And so, day of photo shoot, we would prime our subjects to be like anything that can be done ahead of time. Like if you need to marinate meat for 36 hours, do it ahead of time. Maybe we'll kind of style some images to like insinuate like these are all the spices or herbs you use, right? We definitely took a documentary style approach to shooting, and I think we took the liberty when appropriate to like style some things, because that's kind of like the world that I come from. But obviously we wanted things to feel like authentic and true and like having the reader, the viewer feel like they were like in the moment and there with us. But again, I think my background as an art director, like I'm thinking holistically about how copy, photography, design, the user experience of it all. And so like the design process was really um it's really important to me because I have very high design standards. And I think our inspiration was a really, less of a we drew less inspiration design wise from actual cookbooks and more from like fine art and photography books. I just feel like there's a quality and there's a level of design and aesthetics that you find in fine art and photography art books that maybe you don't get as much in like mainstream cookbooks. So that's where you see a lot of like the use of negative space in this design and layouts to really let the photography come to life. That's how you see like the layout design in terms of like here's the step-by-step process for some of these recipes, being intentional about like, is an image full bleed? Is it smaller scale? Like, what are the use of textures and details? And like, does it make sense to have those live on on their own or be accompanied by, a portrait? So those are all things that like I consider when I design this book, and I think the use of color was also intentional too. Because when I think of like culture and food, I say I'm allergic to color, but with this project, I clearly was not. Like I wanted it to feel vibrant and bold and like use colors that feel sophisticated and elevated, but still like are bold and loud enough for these various people and their cultures to like take up space and like be loud and proud about who they are and where they come from. Even the way that I like distorted the typography, like the typography, was from like, a free Adobe font, but then I had to distort it and use it to like make it stretch out. So it is larger. It is literally louder and bolder, and I think that accompanies like the visual language of the rest of the design of the book.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you would say that you are allergic to color because I think that that is like one of the things that stands out is like I mentioned like when I first saw it like obviously like I've been seeing it on social. I feel like Ali he's been doing like showing it in different places. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So like it pops anywhere you see it, but I think also like having it in my hand. Oh, it's right here. I just, but I feel like having it in my hand, I feel like the color is something that, for one, is like, it makes you want to read it. And I think with a lot of cookbooks, like, I have probably, like, I'm looking, I probably have like 7 cookbooks, but they're all kind of like, they all look the same to me. Like, they're all kind of muted. They're all white. They have like the binding on the side. I feel like also like sometimes they're hard to find because then if I have one white book, then I'm like, oh, well, I don't know where this is. Like, I feel like this would make me want to cook. I feel like also the way that the colors are on the inside of the book, like with the photos of everyone, I think it also makes me want to like read their story because it's almost kind of like it's like a build up. Like it's pretty photos, it's pretty stories, it's a nice recipe. The recipes are also on like bright colored text too. So it's like, oh, okay. Like I think the color is something and even like the texture of the pages, the texture of the cover, and like the size because I've been carrying it in my purse just to like show my friends. But I think also like it makes it really inviting for I think everyone.
And I just got to shout out Diana every time. Like, I'm going to put this in the atmosphere. I think Diana deserves design awards for this book, and I hope that happens. Well
Oh,
deserved.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because graphic design is not necessarily my passion. It's something when I was younger in my earlier in my career, something I was very self-conscious about because I didn't go to art school and like I'm not, trained in graphic design, but I think, with every book I make, I keep trying to like push myself and find different like techniques or have a different design system or a different design perspective. Um, and I feel like this one was really nice.
Well, and I would say like maybe you not being like technically trained is probably also what gives you the eye because I feel like sometimes when you go to school and you learn something, you kind of become rigid in what you're doing because it's something that you're feeling and you're leaning into and you're trying stuff from every project. It's probably why I would imagine that's why like it is so nice because it is something that you were kind of like teaching yourself and learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, getting that hardcover too was pain in my ass. It was quite a journey getting those printed because apparently in the United States we truly do not have the infrastructure to print hardcover fabric bound with matte foil stamping. So, I'm committed to the design process.
I love it. Well, I think also like for you both, like what was the process of having it in your hand? Like I've talked to people who are like I guess like debut authors and they kind of talk about the process of like seeing their first book in their hand and seeing people like how people are receiving it. So like for you both, what was that like I guess what was the feeling like and also what was that like for you? I guess that's the same question, but
Yeah, so they arrived or they were printed in Minnesota. So I picked them up a day before Diana flew in, and like I admitted it to everyone. I like went home and read it, just the whole thing, and like was crying while reading it, because like yeah, it's like you're holding the book you made that you spent like over a year on, but also like the stories like just hit like um and then we were on a local radio station here, and then we wanted to do it live, so Diana saw it for the first time uh, when the interviewer was recording our piece.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to hear my like, half crying voice on NPR, it's on the internet somewhere. Um, but yeah, I mean, feeling it in my hand, like I love a physical and tangible item, right? So having something like a book that we've been working on this project for a little, I mean, I slid into Ryan's DMs like 2.5 years ago, right? And with all the drama of, going through however many printers to get it done, to like not getting color accurate proofs, to really not knowing how the book is gonna end up looking, like I think when I held it in my hand for the first time, I was just like, you did it, you know? And like feeling the sense of like relief, but also like immense pride for this thing that we had made.
no, I love it. I also love that you both met like through DM. I feel like that's like the best DM story I feel like I've ever heard. I feel like they're always kind of sketch.
Yeah, I swear I'm not creepy.
No, and I think also another thing I did think about is when you're reading the book, some of the stories like there's different names for different things. So like I feel like Azar's story like that was about I feel like I'm going to say it wrong. Malava, but then there's also like another name that you could say for that. Then there's also like the story of the ceviche that you mentioned, Diana, but like also so many different cultures have their own variations of ceviche too. So I just thought it was really neat to read how again like I think going back to like that universal thing with food, I think it was also something that kind of just I thought was really interesting. And then like I kept writing down the word gratitude and different things. So like Natalia had mentioned like gratitude and like the barbecues with the family. And then I know with MK story, Ryan, you mentioned like the gratitude with like your family's background with like your mom and her being the first I believe she was like her first sibling that was born in Taiwan but who came to the US, but then having gratitude with like your grandfather and like the devastation in the war and how like something like that could just connect. So I think this is probably like a jumbled question, but like I think as you're reading the stories and being able to share people's stories, like in which way did you guys feel like you experienced gratitude or like saw gratitude or how could you? I see you shaking your head. I was like, I don't know if I'm onto something with that question, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I even felt like I was like in reading the essays again, I was like, wow, it's really redundant with like gratitude and pride, but it was real. Like I think, especially in the times we're in with like such violent xenophobia and hateful rhetoric, like to like be in that little warm kitchen with each of those families and just feel that. right? Not thinking about the outside world or the news, like they were telling their story like heads high, like proud, and then grateful to be able to do it, you know? And so like yeah, I think thematically that was just like consistent across the board. Yeah, I don't know what you think, Diana.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help but feel immense like honor and gratitude to be like invited into someone's home and for them to like welcome you into part of their family, essentially. You know, it's like I had some families like Boris and his family, they made this whole damn spread, you know, and I'm just like, wow, I mean, this is amazing, you know, and like they're they're Armenian, so like he brought out his best Armenian vodka and he like, you know, he's a character, and so we did this whole like cheers and he's like, you're part of our family, blah blah blah, we believe in you, we're so proud of you, blah blah blah. It's like you can't help but feel gratitude. And also, I mean, you know, from this participants or subjects perspective, like there's obviously a lot of like scary shit happening in the world right now, and we have like one international student, Louise, and he, you know, um he's an international student from Ghana, and he's getting his PhD at the University of Minnesota. And like when I interviewed him, it was literally like 10 days before that I had detained the first student at the University of Minnesota, right? And like, you know, when you're reading that story, like I start off the essay just being like, are you okay? Like we don't have to do this. And he's like, you know, I'm just trying to focus on like what I can control right now. And so for him to have that much, you know, to have that perspective and almost like a sense of gratitude also for just being where he is and accepting his situation, um, you know, that's always just like a really that helps put things into perspective for me too, you know?
Yeah, I think the book when it came out, I just think especially like I feel like this is like a celebration of like cultures and celebration of people that are really like being targeted too. Like I think for like you both, like what does it mean to have your book come out at this time? Like I think also like in the forward, I think it's kind of captured there too, but like for you both, like what is it like, especially with all of everything?
Yeah. I mean, I think Diana and I both like we like to use our art as a tool, as a like Gordon Parks said, weapon of choice, you know? Like coincidentally, like I'm lucky enough to share this book right now, and then I'm releasing a short film, a very local Somali story in Minneapolis when the president is attacking the Somali community here. And so it's like, man, sometimes you feel helpless, but hey, if you can like help shift the narrative and have an impact in that way, then that feels powerful.
Yeah, and Ryan said it in a different interview that, you know, we did like a month or so ago. It's like none of what's happening is entirely new, right? Like people have been battling hatred and xenophobia for, you know, since the beginning of time, right? Like and I think with at least with my art, I try to like hit on very like real themes and topics, but also it is part of, you know, our art can be part of the resistance and can be celebratory and joyful. And I think, you know, our launch party was a really good example of that. You know, we had it at this small natural wine bar. We had chefs with their own immigration story making food, like freaking black and brown people, and it filled up the entire space. And like we had a DJs, and you know that DJ was incredible. Just the vibes were immaculate that night, and I think people felt that sense of celebration and that sense of joy and like that safe, honestly, probably that sense of safety, so they could relax and have a good
Mm-hmm.
time. You know, so if that's like the one thing that like the art or the work that I do can provide for people, then like I'm satisfied. I'm happy.
No, I love that. Like I like the switching the narrative, and I think also people often say like they don't say stuff. Well, yeah, like they don't really say stuff because they feel like if I'm one person, I'm not really. doing much. But I think also like using your art as a form to kind of switch narrative and also to bring like positivity out there. Like I think that is an example of how like you could do something that is true to you, but also to like make change.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay, and then I guess also um another question I had, so like where do you want to see this book get used? Because I feel like it's kind of like a coffee table book, but it's also again like a book that you can actually use. So, like for you both, what is like your vision? And then I had, well, yeah, sorry, I feel like I have two questions in one, but yeah.
I do the same thing. I totally respect it. I mean, like we are blessed that we may sell out of our first run of print before the new year. And that's incredible. You know, you never know when you like go on this adventure. So we're grateful for that. And yeah, I think like accessible spaces is always pretty cool to me. Like it's gotten in a few libraries here. Um, it's gotten in local bookstores. Diana can share some awesome news about a shop in LA that she's got into.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Now Serving is a bookstore here I live in Los Angeles, but I just moved out here in the springtime. But Now Serving is, what do they say? They're Los Angeles's only like cookbook only store. And so it's cool to have, they have a few copies there, and it's cool to have like our book amongst, like all the major players in the industry. Um, and it looks great on the bookshelves amongst the sea of, kind of sameness with some of the cookbooks in the industry. I mean, they have all the cool ones, so like every cookbook looks great there. Um, but it's like, we don't have an image on our front cover. There's nothing to do with food on our front cover. It's just like a bright color, the fabric, is eye-catching, the color is eye-catching. So that's amazing. But I think, in a broader sense, like I think archiving is really important. And so I've been thinking about the importance of archiving and how, um, yeah, just the importance of it, right? Like we live in such a digital age where like, I can shoot a great set of whatever images and put it on Instagram or put it, on my blog, but like, in 20 years, is that really, I mean, is anything I do going to matter in 20 years? I don't know, but like I think having something tangible again, that all of these family stories or individual stories are archived, documented, and presented in a really thoughtful and designed way, like that has the potential to like, be put in someone's memory box for someone's great grandchildren's to read in the future. Like how cool is that? How cool is that to be able to be the person to document and archive another person's story that hopefully be impactful to their family and future generations. It's incredible.
Well, yes, because it will be impactful. Because if you really think about it, so much of the stories that we have of our food or like so much of our recipes, we don't know them. So, like, my grandmother passed away. So, like, there's so much of her recipes that I wish I would have, like, asked about. Like, hot water cornbread. I feel like I could figure it out, but it wouldn't taste the same. Or, like, banana pudding. Like, I wish I would have really sat down and asked her stuff so I could write it down. And I think that that's the thing that's so special. Like even reading Natalia's story, I believe Natalia's grandfather passed away after the book came out or in the printing process, but he was alive when like to get the recipe. So like I think being able to like trace it, but also have like a record, I think is just really powerful because it goes for decades after you're gone. So like I think archiving, like that's beautiful. And I think the book too, I could see it like I'll put it on my bookshelf because it is so pretty. It's not like I wouldn't want to get it dirty, but I also want to be able to reference it. So I feel like I was thinking too with the white page, like with the blank space, I was thinking of getting like that little like small Polaroid and putting some of them when I try to like make the recipes and just putting them there because I'm really excited
So
to make
cute.
Azar's recipe.
Yeah, that's so cute. I love that.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to hold that one.
You're good.
Um,
um, and I guess also, well, I feel like I could talk and ask you guys a lot of questions, but I think for you both, if there is one thing that you want people to take away from Back of House, what would that be?
it's funny at our launch party, I was writing this on all the books when we were signing in the beginning, and it was like it's kind of it's like a long sentence, and then eventually my hand got tired and I just wrote my name. But I I wrote keep feeding your people, taking care of your community, and sharing stories because I think this as a cookbook is much more than just a cookbook. It's like a call to action almost like get together with your family, read an essay together, talk about your family history, and maybe don't even follow a recipe, just be inspired to make something together. You know?
Yeah, and I think all of what Ryan said, and also, part of my work as an art director and like the personal photography work that I do, like, I'm really inspired by the everyday person, and I'm really inspired by the tenacity and like truly like the beauty of an everyday person. And so, I mean, we've had some feedback from our participants or our subjects, basically being like, thank you for telling our story. You captured our our soul, our essence, what we've been working so hard to do. You captured it perfectly and we feel seen. And so, that's really humbling and that's really inspiring to me. So if anyone reading this, if they read these stories and they feel seen and heard and resonate with something, and maybe it provides some sort of healing or some sort of introspection or some sort of, reaction like that, like that's all I ask for. That's just like the most rewarding thing about doing what we do.
No, I love. And I believe you will sell out before the holiday. But if people want to get a copy, where can they find the book?
Yeah, and honestly, like getting one now, we can get it shipped out just in time for yourself for a gift for the holidays, and you'll likely get one before we sell out on my website, ryanstopera.com, in the shop, and we'll send it out to you before the holidays.
Yay, perfect. And then last question. Well, I'm gonna end with two last questions. One is not really a thinking question. It's if people want to get in contact with you both, how can they do that? And then my second question is, it's going to be something interesting. Something foodie. Well, I feel like I was dancing like I was going to make something really, really deep. But how about if you had to say, oh, I have a good one because I feel like also I've seen like when Ollie was going to different places, some of them are record stores too, right? So if you had to make one meal either from the book or one meal that you think speaks to you, what would you make and what would be your musical pairing? Like if you had to make a playlist. See, that's a good one. That's why I was dancing. I knew it was gonna come there.
Oh man, you're making a girl think. Well, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is dalbrecht3. Um, that's where I'll like, I don't know, not doing much personal work right now. Obviously, I'm recovering from this project, but see pictures of my cat and
Yay.
random various adventures I go on. Um, I think for me, I'll make like a kimchi stew that feels like really heartwarming and nostalgic and cozy. Um, with some pork belly. Gotta get the
Mm.
fat in there, the flavor, some tofu, crack an egg on it. feel like that's like my comfort meal. And what song would I play to it? Um,
Either song or album.
I don't know, this is mad cheesy, but I've been getting all of my friends hooked on K-pop Demon Hunters.
Oh,
I
that's not.
I fought it for so long because I'm like, ugh, K-pop, like, ugh, whatever, like mainstream white culture, blah blah blah. And then Audrey Nuna is one of the musical voices on it, and I think she's such a baddie. And so I watched it. I'm like, okay, this is like really emotional for me as like a Korean person. This is a great movie, and the music is great. So I might play the soundtrack to K-pop Demon Hunters while
No,
making my kimchi stew.
I like it.
That's a good answer, man.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna share a good food memory I just had. But you can find me on Instagram. That's a good spot. Just my name. So for Thanksgiving, my wife's family watches the dog show, and
Oh,
I made greens. Because I could honestly eat greens like every week. Like it's just they're so good with the smoked turkey leg and all that. Um,
mm,
and my wife's grandma, she gave me the approval, which was like everything. And then we're like a bunch of nerds, so we're listening to like John Williams, like Star Wars soundtrack. That was that was a really like cute moment. Got approval from grandma about my greens, listening to Star Trek, and yeah, that was fun.
no, I love. I
Yeah,
feel like I could also have greens every day. Like I
yeah,
feel like it's a good sense of or a good source of fiber, and you're getting all your greens in.
so good. Yeah, and
Mm,
like with I froze some because I made like a giant pot. I'm gonna make some black beans and rice and greens, and honestly,
mm,
I will like remember I have that in like a couple weeks, and
that would be good.
yeah,
No, that's like a fuck up. Like, I mean, that's not a fuck up, but like how we were talking about fuck ups. My mom made greens for Thanksgiving and she was saying she messed up because she forgot to put everything else in there except the meat, and they were actually really delicious.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how you learn.
The art of cooking, it's all experimenting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Love it.
Perfect. Well, yay. Well, thank you both so much. I will put the links to your Instagrams below, but then also, I'm saying like, and then I'll also put a link to where people could purchase the cookbook as well.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun. You're great. Yeah, this is a nice
Oh, thank you,
conversation.
Fred.
To meet you. Thank you for all your thoughtful questions.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you. Hold on, I'm gonna